It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Welcome to The New Next, a podcast that addresses current events and how they will impact the future.
I don't really go on social media. I haven't really been on social media much for years because I just don't want to associate it with it. And I've seen how it affects people. I think Instagram it's literally like all this stuff you feed off people. And I've seen people that I know struggle, and me including, struggle with their self-worth because of this society projection that all you are is money. And I think it's just, you know, the people, I watch this like Yes Theory. I don't know if that YouTube channel. Mm. So it's just these like guys, or like millennials, but they go out and do cool, inspirational stuff. And one of this, and it's actual events, but the one that they posted today, and I haven't watched this in probably 6 months, but I opened up YouTube downstairs, and kids weren't here for once, and it just popped up, and it was, we did a $10,000 taxi ride, and it was amazing. I got lost here thinking about how amazing the guy is in it, that I forgot where I was going with the story. But basically, the story with this was they got off the plane in London, and they met this cool taxi driver, hit it off, and then they spent the next 2 days trying to meet a taxi driver that would basically travel with them for 10 days until they reached $10,000 on a taxi cab ticket or whatever it was. But they couldn't find someone, so they found the guy that they had originally driven from the airport and called him up. And this guy had some of the biggest nuggets of wisdom that I have ever heard. People say that he's just a taxi driver. Listen to some of this stuff. Like it was 45 minutes long, approximately. But I hope you watch it. I'll try to link it in here, or I'll try to maybe put some quotes in there. But it was a guy that had it figured out, but he was still in process of figuring out. And he was a 69-year-old Indian immigrant that had been a taxi driver for 40 years in London, something like that, 40 plus years. But the guy had just this wonderful spirit. And there was a part in there where they went and stayed in a castle, and he got to stay in like the king's room. And you kind of see the emotion in his eyes, because he feels, because he's not a king from a certain lineage, that he's not a king. And seeing a man like that express himself with such love, before he said yes, he said, I would love to do this, but I'm a taxi driver, and the most important thing for me is to make sure that my community is taken care of. And there's all these people, whether they're disabled or they're whatever, that when they need to get to their medical appointments, they have my number and they know that I'm reliable and I'm going to be there to take care for them. And that's a hero. That's a king of his own domain. And it's King Arthur personified. The idea of King Arthur as this benevolent person. So he goes to that first, and then I can't do it. So they come up with this. They're like, if we can arrange these people to take all your responsibilities for all these people, will you do it? And then before even asking where they go, he just goes on the journey. And Joseph Campbell is one of my favorite philosophers. Joseph Campbell Foundation from back in the day. He talks a lot about the hero's journey. Mm-hmm. And I think if you look at the ordinary in a heroic sense, you just I think, have maybe a different perspective on the world. And I think we get lost sometimes in power and stuff like that. And also perspective too, because as much as I just detest the idea of kings and stuff like that, reading some of Prince Harry's book, you really realize how much those people are trapped in a system themselves. And you are just like, oh my God, I have zero envy for anybody associated with that. And then also to be responsible for all the horrible stuff institutionally that your family and its institutional cronies have done for centuries. It's some hard shit. I don't know. I think we're all a king. I think you're a king or a queen, whatever you like.
I don't like that kind of analogy because the king and the royal family is supported by the community of nobles, and the nobles are just as powerful, if not more powerful, than the royal family. And it doesn't mean that they are worth, some of them are, but if you don't have the nobles with you, you can't rule effectively because they're the ones who fund everything that the royal family is able to do. And then the nobles are supported by the level between them and basically the workers and stuff. And I'm not saying there aren't decent people in every branch of a hierarchy, whether it's that hierarchy or whatever we have in America, which is a much more twisted version of royal family and nobles, because the nobles in America are lobbyists.
There's actually lineage societies so I'm one of maybe a couple thousand people that qualify for a certain lineage society. But according to my grandmother, we were canceled from it because we were anti-racist. And one of my great uncles was in charge of it. He's the biggest piece of shit in U.S. history, but he's still idolized to this day. But America is still run by there's these secret societies that meet, and since they're lineage based, they're the only people that go there are literally white males from a specific bloodline, and they've been meeting for 100. At least the one that my great uncle was involved is 100 since 1880 or something. And
there's some that's been running before 1700s. I'm not.
Yeah,
but I'm saying that's a.
Yeah, I know.
There's just such a separation of that, and someone like, I'm not saying necessarily me, but someone like me, because it's just different. It's not the same. I'm not supposed to have true concerns about the world. So my class of citizen, now it's gotten a little bit different with how social media specifically has allowed certain things, but now it's a rhetoric device as opposed to an actual, influencers is the funniest thing because they don't influence anything other than buying a certain product or buying a brand. And I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just saying that it's not somebody that's actually, it's almost a staged kind of thing of where we need to be upset about this specific issue. And we've talked about this on the podcast multiple times. No matter who the president is, no matter who the leader is, Putin does it all the time as well, that it's a lot of misdirection. And Trump, it was a lot more visible because there were so many anti-Trump people. So every time something happened...
Russian chess, it's 3D chess.
And we've talked about how Biden has done some of the similar things where this is what's in the headlines, but here's what's really going on that we need to be concerned about.
Here's where the money's going.
It's going to be happening with whoever the next president is as well.
Exactly.
Because that's the game. And I appreciate our friendship and stuff, but I also don't want to ever pretend that I'm on the same hierarchical level as you. And I appreciate don't give me all this other. I don't care what you disagree on.
What does that even mean, though? Because my parents had a lot of money?
That's part of it, but you haven't abandoned all of the hierarchy benefits and stuff. I'm not saying, I'm using hierarchy for lack of a better term. Even though epistemology might be holistic, we still...
Family branding.
We live in a foundational world. and your foundation is considered stronger. And money is part of that. I'm not talking about money as everything, because it's not, but it's just a different kind of world. But in my world, my level of foundation, I can go to certain people to get things that you might not be able to get things from those same people, but you have your own people that you're able to be taken care of.
Yeah.
And that's where that kingship stuff that you're talking about. But if you're a peasant, you're still a peasant. It's not necessarily a bad thing to be a peasant. It's just an understanding that going from the world of a peasant to the world of a noble, or whenever you jump a level, it's a completely different world. And we've talked about this before on just other things. So
I personally think a lot of people have forgot their ancestry, and they don't really, maybe it wasn't communicated to them, but I talked to my dad a while back, and maybe he had such a bad relationship with my grandmother that maybe he just couldn't listen to it. But she was like, I don't know, I'm related to everybody, but I think a lot more people are related to everybody than they would think. So if you have 10 kids that have 10 kids that have 10 kids, then that's, 102 people or something. My math's not that good, but...
If you have 10 kids who each have 10 kids, it's 112. Then they have 10 kids, so now you're 1,112. The thing is that, everybody might be related in some way, shape, or form, but there's a difference between... That's not what we're talking about when we're talking about lineage. We're not talking about somebody who is fifth cousin, third, 3 times removed with this to the corner. That's not a... I'm not this, what I'm getting ready to say, but, my distant cousin is Keanu Reeves. So I go and hang out with him because we're family. Or Vin Diesel, so that way family means something with the whole Fast and Furious.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
It doesn't, he's not going to be like, oh, wow, dude, we're 100 separations. Let's party.
But people, the internet thinks that's how it is. Because media writes about it like that.
But that's the propaganda that is... I'm saying this in the nicest way I possibly can, and I don't necessarily accept the system, but I also understand that this is the system I live in.
Yeah.
The propaganda necessary, ultimately, it doesn't matter what the form is. There's going to be personal growth, and then there's beyond personal growth. But a majority of people come home from work. If you would like to learn more about the New Next podcast, find us at thenewnextpodcast.com, where you can suggest a topic you would like for us to cover. If you enjoyed what you heard, share the podcast, tell a friend about it, or rate us with 5 stars.